Hi, everyone. I actually think I got invited here because I bought Marco breakfast when I saw him in London. There's no other reason. I'm not really going to talk to you about Ocado very much, so it's just a bit of a departure. I'm going to talk to you about the global food supply chain. I think it could be kind of fun to chat about. Up until about 3 months ago, I was the food retail analyst for Credit Suisse, and I covered companies like Tesco, Carrefour, Ahold Delhaize. And when I talked to institutional investors about grocery companies, the way I would talk to them is to say that grocers are basically big real estate corporations, big logistics corporations, and a little bit of a marketing business that makes Tesco Tesco or Carrefour Carrefour. I'm going to pick on Tesco for a second because I know the company reasonably well. It owns around 55% of its stores in the UK and still pays £1 billion a year in rent. It is the largest private employer in the UK, and it spends around 4% of its sales just moving stuff from suppliers to DCs and then from DCs to its stores. So it's a really high-cost business model. Profit margins are notoriously thin, around 3% operating profit margins. Differentiation is difficult, but they do enjoy free picking and delivery, which basically means somebody comes into the store, picks the stuff off the shelf, and takes it home. Now, I'm going to talk about online grocery, which is kind of what we do at Ocado. And as an analyst, I saw this as an absolute value destroyer. This is basically one of the worst businesses in the world. Online grocery serves up perhaps the most difficult set of logistical problems around there right now. If you were Amazon and I ordered this iPhone case for $30, it probably costs somebody 50 cents to go and pick this off a shelf in the warehouse and stick it in a bin. If it costs 50 cents to pick that, it probably costs 50 cents to pick a tube of toothpaste or a lettuce or a peach. So when those items are only $1 in cost, your economics are already upside down. Add in the fact that the basket size is 40 to 50 items and that substitutions and stockouts are real problems, then things like there's packing issues, you don't put the bleach on top of the tomatoes, you've got 3 different temperature zones. You as a customer say that I want to have this order in a particular hour time slot, which is very difficult to hit, low drop density, and you get all sorts of problems as to why logistics are very difficult for grocery. This has led to the world's worst .com disaster. Webvan, for those that are over a certain age, will remember they raised $800 million in 1999. They went public, had a $5 billion market cap, and were bankrupt 18 months later. It put the US grocers off of online grocery for decades, which is fantastic for us. So that's the retail side of grocery. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the supply side. We've got something going on in the UK right now, which is a fantastic case study. It's Brexit. Brexit is probably the first time you've heard this today. I wrote this report a few months before I joined Ocado. It was really to focus on the cost side of Brexit, what's going to happen to the grocery supply chain. I basically came up with these numbers that between a soft Brexit and a hard Brexit, costs are going to increase between 2.3 and 5.6% for the grocers. Now remember, their operating profit margins are 3%. So this is essentially 100 to 200% of their profits. So that was a problem for the grocers. The corollary to this was that it highlighted an issue around security of supply and assortment. And that's really important when it comes to the future. There's very few people, or very few nations, that have 100% food security. So under Brexit, for instance, people were saying, well, why don't you just grow more or import more? Well, that's not very easy to do. This is the UK supply and production ratio. This is like the self-sufficiency ratio. It's been falling about 30% since the early 80s. This basically means that we are producing in the country less what we consume than we used to. It's not very easy to import more stuff. Now, there's a bit of a mix issue here as well. I think in the 80s, you weren't eating very many Ocados or eating much quinoa, and now you are. So that does have an impact on this. But the question is really about security of supply, and there's a lot of issues in the newspapers about what Britain is going to do. This is This is not unique to Britain, though. I will say that the food supply in general is very global already. Like bulks, things like rice and flour and grains, heavy items like wine can be shipped in containers. But already, 7% of container volume globally is for food. They're refrigerated containers. This guy is packing bananas into a refrigerated container. And you can see a CAGR of refrigerated seaborne trade up about 3.5% every year. So that's the supply side. So we know the retailers and we know the supply side. Here's where I think it gets interesting. Consumers, I walk into a Tesco. I don't very much because I now order groceries online from Ocado. But I used to walk into a Tesco in January and say, I want strawberries, and I want good strawberries, and I want avocados. I want access to fresh, large assortment products, high quality, any time of the year. However, I don't want to contribute to climate change or deforestation or megafarm environmental impacts or poor animal welfare or labor exploitation or water overuse or pesticide use. So the problem here is that the globalization of food production is at odds with consumer trends right now. This is where I think technology comes into it. The two areas I'm going to highlight is a change to the retail model and a change to the production model. So the retail model is about centralization. And this is a little of a slide where we talk about Ocado. Centralization only works in online and home delivery. If you have one really big Tesco in the middle of London, that doesn't really work for food. You need some convenience aspect. But it does work in an online model. When you think about the costs I talked about in the first slide, if you can remove those, the real estate costs, the labor costs, improve the service levels, things like assortment, accuracy, and in-stock position. And you can do that by adding automation, which we do with thousands of robots and very scalable facilities. Then you can make it profitable. We have one facility in Erith, East London. It has a capacity of 1.2 billion pounds of throughput per year. That's the equivalent of 30 of Tesco's largest stores. They average around 7,000 square meters each. Now, one of the key benefits to that centralization is that if you're a small supplier or a niche supplier of something really interesting, if you wanted to sell it to Tesco, you would have to ship that to 760 different Tesco stores. So the model is very tricky. Whereas if you want to ship that to Ocado, we only have 3 facilities. So you can do that in very small quantities. You can be a small supplier. So we can provide a much broader range to people because we don't need the same kind of things that Tesco needs. So this centralization of retail helps the economics and actually improves customer service. The second thing I want to talk to you about is this production side, vertical and controlled environment farming. Now, this is a technology that has changed materially over the past couple of years. The advent of really cheap LEDs and really high efficiency LEDs has led to this explosion of new startups in this kind of environment. Now, it checks so many boxes that are positive for production. First of all, plants are bred for taste, not for the ability to survive a long shipment or hardiness. Very low water use. About 3% of traditional farming, multiple cycles. There's no seasonality in this. It's localized, so there's very few food miles. You're not actually transferring this anywhere. It's better than organic because it's not actually outside, just in time. But the last thing I really want to talk to you about is this extreme density. So the fact is that you can put one of these facilities next to one of our large retail facilities, and you can imagine a day, not very far in the future, where in your grocery app order, and you order your tomatoes and your spinach and your kale, they're actually picked when you order them because they're located next to the facility that is going to collate that order and ship it to you. So it'll be fresher, more nutritious, healthier, better for the environment, and better for the farmer as well. So, and maybe even cheaper. Conclusions. I think distribution channels and consumer demands are shifting materially in food. I think if you're a store, you worry, which is probably a theme of this whole conference, given the digitization of everything. If you send commodity products thousands of miles, I think you should worry. If you have production or growing expertise, I think technology is going to help you reach a much broader base and sell globally, regardless of your size. And you can probably bypass the middleman and make it more profitable as well. Food security is going to be achievable by virtually anybody. Final conclusion, the future of food, in my view, is hugely exciting. Thank you very much.